Hey, what's up, masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery podcast. And man, today, with all the changes coming to the real estate industry, you guys know I've spent the last couple weeks just focusing on real estate agents. It's kind of ironic that we actually started doing this before the news came out. Anyway, just because we're so listings focused, but the timing's perfect. So today we have Christopher Nolan with us, as well as Ashley Kroger, who are both out there producing hardcore agents, closing a lot of transactions. And you guys are going to be talking to us today about what are you doing, moving forward with the changes coming, post settlement, all the good things when it comes to listing. So first, I want to start with ladies before gentlemen. So Ashley, do you want to just give us an introduction? Tell us how many transactions you closed last year, where you're located, et cetera, et cetera.
So, hey everybody, I'm Ashley Kroger with Kroger Properties. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. Last year, just a little bit about me. I do residential and commercial, also do development as well. So a lot of new construction, a lot of renovations. Last year, I closed 20 transactions. My goal is to obviously double it this year. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Okay, and from last year with your transactions, was that listings, buyers, like what
majority of it was listed. I had like 4 or 5 buyers last year. The majority of that was listings, though.
Okay, good, awesome. And Chris, same thing. Units last year, where you're located, percentage buyers versus listings.
I work mainly in the residential, a little bit of commercial for certain clients, but primarily residential with a lot of new construction in there. And I was just shy of 100. I think it was at 97 units last year, and it was probably about 75% on the selling side, the listing side.
All right, awesome. And so I'd love to know from both of you. So we'll kind of start here, and then we'll just have because it's funny, this conversation originally, and we're going to get to it, was how to take a listing before the weekend, right? Like it's Tuesday now, and how are you going to take a listing before the weekend, which we can still talk about, but with the NAR settlement and everything else going on right now, we kind of transitioned a little bit, or a lot of bit, right? Because I think we all have to transition a lot of bit. But so I'll start with you first, Ashley. How do you feel like that impacts your business, and what are you doing to kind of what word am I looking for? Just to deal with the changes coming. All right, Ashley. Yeah, we have a bad connection, unfortunately. So, Chris, I'm going to go to you. Same question, Christopher. Tell us about what are you doing right now? How do you feel like it's going to impact your business, and what are you doing to combat the changes?
I got to be honest with you. I'm actually pretty excited about it. Everybody is running around like the sky is falling, and at the end of the day, most of the clients they don't really know or understand. And my job has always been to educate them as to what's going on. So, we'll have the conversation of where the commission goes and all that. Right now, it's business as usual. But, the agents that are scared and they don't want to talk about this, it just is what it is. This is the number one industry, as far as I'm concerned, in the country. We're the only industry that directly affects the economy of the United States. So when we have that conversation and we talk with our potential sellers and lay it out, it's just going to be a matter of changing the way the conversation a little bit over how do we write up the commission, right? They're going to have to know that a lot of our buyers that are not going to have the money to pay the commission on the buyer side, there's going to be some concessions in there. And when the smoke settles, we'll figure out how that's to be written. But it's not going to slow my business down at all.
Yeah. So you primarily focused on 75% listings anyway. So your philosophy is, I'm just going to kind of keep moving forward, educate the sellers, the buyers, etc. So, yeah. But talk about the difference though, because let's say you did 25 buyer sides last year. How's that going to impact your business, your team members, when
Well-
there is no compensation offered to them.
Well,
on the MLS.
first off, I don't believe that we're gonna when the dust settles. I don't believe we're gonna be left with no compensation for the buyers agents. I know it has to be disclosed, but it's changing. But from everything I see, there'll still be a way that the sellers can provide the concessions to allow for the buyers agents to come in. And we all know that when you put a listing in the MLS or you market it, if we don't have buyers agents bringing the the buyers to us, it's going to be much harder for those buyers. And we have already seen companies like Zillow that have tried to do this iBuyer thing and tried to put these programs out there where people can buy and sell homes on their own. And people don't do it for a reason. They need somebody that's trusted and tested to go through this. So if you're forcing that person to go unrepresented and work strictly with the listing agent, they're going to be setting people up for failure. So I don't believe for a minute that they're going to allow this thing to go through and have buyers agents not get compensated.
Well, so to be clear, it's not that they're not going to let buyer agents be compensated. It's just not going to be disclosed on the MLS.
Right. Right. So the tactics will change a little bit. And once it all comes out, then, I know here they're talking about having like a, drop down with what the seller is willing to, put out there. So until it's done, we don't know until they're done and they actually put the final, the final rules out there. But at the end of the day, I don't see them putting us in a position where the buyer's agents.
So let me ask you this, and I'm going to go over to Ashley and hope she has a better connection now. Do you guys buy leads at all? Do you get internet leads?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so we don't have to get into the specifics, but you get an internet lead. They come in as a buyer. They say, "Hey, I want to see 123 Main Street." Your agent pulls up 123 Main Street. There's nothing on the MLS. That seems like it's going to be one of the biggest challenges.
But that's a buyer broker agreement, and if it's a savvy listing agent, they're going to have the conversation with their seller that they have to be ready to pay a concession to the buyer's agents, because otherwise the buyer's agents aren't going to bring their clients through. And as much as I like to double end the deals when possible, and I do right as best I can, I can't represent both parties. So, to say that a first-time home buyer or somebody is going to have to navigate the situation by themselves, I don't believe that we're going to, let that happen. I believe it'll work out, and there'll be a clear way in a few months of how that commission is being negotiated. I don't believe that it'll be just left.
Let me ask you this: why do you think that that settlement happened? Why do you think that NAR agreed to the settlement? Because you sound like you're completely. I love it. You're like completely against it. From what I'm hearing, you're not buying it, and so why do you think it happened in the first place?
I think it came up because certain people convinced the courts that it was misleading. But I have had the conversation with every seller out there as to why we offer buyers compensation, right? And you have the listing amount, and then the buyer's compensation is paid as a way to attract those people to bring their buyers. So, what's going to happen ultimately is by reducing this, let's just say that we do in fact make the buyers pay the commission. Right off the bat, that means the house prices are going to drop by 2.5% to 3% on average. Okay.
Well, see, I don't know if I agree with that, because it seems like it's the same. Because why is the seller going to reduce the price? Because it's figured into there. If you do a it's funny because I didn't know your position on this before this, so this is great.
Well, if you have an appraisal done, right? Yeah. And the appraisal takes into account seller concessions to figure out the value, right? So you have a $10,000 concession on this one, none on this one. It does affect the value. Now, if you're saying on this transaction, it was a 3% buyer commission, buyer agent commission, and not on this one, it's going to change the values.
Yeah,
right.
Maybe.
So
I don't know. Does the appraisal factor in the commission? I don't know if I ever heard that one.
Absolutely, they're gonna factor in all of the rates.
So okay. So to your point, I'm going to toss over to Ashley. I see she's shaking her head. It's so as right now, because inventory is low in a lot of areas, I kind of lean on the side that the seller has a lot more leverage. It's not going to be as important, but as inventory, if inventory does start to come back and there's more listings, because Chris, the reality is if the seller has 20 buyers waiting on their property, hey, whatever, man. I don't care if you pay your buyer's agent or not. It's not my problem.
Yeah.
Right. If you have other people that want to buy it. But the point is if inventory comes back and there's fewer buyers, then yeah, I agree with you 100%. It makes the buyer's agent a lot more important. I want to hear what Ashley has to say. What's up, Ashley? You got a better connection? Yeah, I can't hear you. We're getting nothing. So yeah. Hey, so tip for Ashley: next time someone invites you to be on a podcast, be in an office or a house. So Chris, back to you then. Okay, I get your position. And it goes both ways, right? That's the reality. So I don't want to, you and I. This point is not to go back and forth with you on.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
This, right? I think it goes both ways. I agree with you. We sold a lot of houses in my time as well, and I appreciated a buyer's agent being involved in many cases, and then there were many cases that the buyer agent being involved was a hindrance. It just created more challenges, and so it really goes both ways,
Absolutely.
I
think it'll make the industry stronger. Right. They're already talking about, at least here in Florida, and I know a lot of other states already have this mandatory buyer broker agreements.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why that wasn't there in the first place. That needs to be in place. Right.
So what does that mean exactly? Can you explain that?
Well, because in Florida, you can basically run around with a client as a transaction broker, basically unrepresented. Agents are not signing on and creating that relationship. So then they get upset when they find out that their potential, what they thought was a client, which really wasn't, went with somebody else. They never had them sign anything. They never committed to working with them, right? Maybe they got a pre-approval, maybe they don't. I can't tell you the amount of people that show up at my listings and then they're like, oh yeah, and now we're going to go do the pre-approval. I'm like, why would you show somebody a house if they're not pre-approved? So hopefully this will make the industry a whole lot better, across the board.
Well, I agree with you on that one. I think, and I think it's smart. Everybody should have the agency agreement. And I think some agents think, hey, just because I spent time with you and, I showed you a lot of houses, like they somehow feel obligated, and people aren't. They just don't. If I've seen so many times where somebody would spend a ton of time with somebody, and then all of a sudden they end up buying a house with somebody else, and the agent's very frustrated, and it's their own fault, and they just assume because, we have this relationship. I mean, I've seen it happen where somebody's friend did it to them, like somebody they've known for years, and
David, how many times have you heard a buyer's agent use something along the lines of, well, why don't you just go ahead and work with me? You're not paying my commission anyway.
100%. Yeah.
And I mean, the problem is we have people out there that are not creating value. I know what I bring to the table when I'm helping my people negotiate. We just went on, I went on as a buyer, we went with an FHA loan up against all cash offers, and we won. Because I knew how to use the contract and negotiate the small details to give the seller exactly what they wanted. Right? But other people are going around out there saying, use me. You're not paying my commission anyway. So no value gets no money.
Ashley, did you get your phone fixed? Yeah, you have no audio, my friend, unfortunately. I'm sorry. So yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, just when you get audio, let us know. So Chris, we'll keep the conversation going. So let us know So what are you doing now? I mean, here's the reality. Like I just keep telling everybody in our community, you're part of our community. We're focused on listings. Like regardless, like you said, the buyer side will work itself out somehow or another. I feel like a lot of agents are going to leave the industry. It's going to get very difficult for a lot of agents. That's the reality. Specifically, a lot of agents that rely on internet leads. And there's going to be a lot that are left over too that are figure it out. But at the end of the day, listings are the name of the game.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And you're right. If your whole business is built on nothing but those internet leads, I agree with you. You're not going to have a lot left. But we use the internet leads to enhance what we're doing. But my personal business is almost 100% referrals at this point. I think I told you, before we started this, we're only into Tuesday. I already got 5, agreements for listing agreements for this week, and I have a 6th one set up for Thursday. Those are all sphere of influence. Those have nothing to do with the internet. So if you create the value, it's about building a relationship. Some of these relationships are 2, 3, 5 years old. Now you're muted, David.
You're muted, David.
Oh, there you go. Hey, we can hear you, Ashley. What's going on?
I just had to come back in. I completely agree. I think as far as, and I don't know how far you guys got, but as far as my feedback with kind of the rulings and everything, I don't see it changing a whole lot of business. Again, I agree with Christopher that the biggest, I think, change that we're going to see in the industry is for the agents that don't provide value and can't articulate, right? Because at the end of the day, based on my understanding of the changes, it never says that the sellers aren't going to offer buyer brokerage commission. It literally just says you cannot advertise it, right? The issue is people have taken that and just run with it to where it's like, okay, well now, buyers are going to have to pay for, all of their agents, which is a possibility, right? But it's always been a possibility. It's not like that's new because, and I know, obviously, I think the other thing too, is that the way that buyer brokerage agreements and commission agreements and all of that stuff was structured across every state was different. So like in Georgia, that's always been a thing in our listing agreements and also in our buyer brokerage agreements. We always have commission and it's broken down in its own separate section to where it's like, hey, this is what we charge for our services. It's either a percentage flat fee, whatever the case may be that you agree. A lot of times, again, I think Christopher as well, is that the issue also comes with how it was advertised, where again, a lot of buyers agents will be like, hey, look, I mean, obviously you can work for me because you don't pay my commission anyways. It's essentially free. It's not free. You just generally do not pay it, right? And so I think being able to articulate how the process actually works, how commission actually works, and also making sure that your clients understand that, hey, look, this is what I charge. I don't work for free. Are you comfortable with this value, right? Or with whatever this amount is based on the services that you're going to get? If the chance that the seller is either willing to cover all of it, great. Not willing to cover all of it, are you willing to cover a portion? If not all of it, cool. Then let's move forward. And that's the way, in a nutshell, how I've always articulated it to my clients, and they've never had issues with it, right? And so I think the biggest thing is now understanding how transparent you have to be. And because that wasn't the case, and again, because people didn't have established agency agreements or representation, there was a whole lot of gray area and wasn't really a whole lot of oversight as far as what you should and what you shouldn't do. And then now you've got people that generally, to me, again, we kind of live in a society where everybody's fueled by money and they sue for everything. And so I was like, I don't necessarily know if I feel like there was a basis. I'm also not super happy that NAR really just decided to settle as opposed to going forward with legal representation. Maybe it was too costly, but I don't know. I don't necessarily foresee it changing a whole lot other than, what we can advertise and now being able to make sure that you can articulate the value that you provide to your client.
It's interesting, but because both of you guys, I see it changing tremendously. Because but I want to open it up, by the way. If anybody has questions, raise your hands. If you're on Clubhouse, if you're on one of the social apps, feel free, just grab the link there, or you can post your questions in the chat. And yeah, we'd love to get you into the conversation. So if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. And the reason I say that is I think for a listing agent, you're right. There's probably not a lot of changes. I mean, besides the fact that now the other agents are going to have to call us. We're we've always explained the way the commission worked to the seller. We told them we get a certain percentage, then we can offer a percentage to the other agent. So we're going to continue doing that. But the difference is really the way now that the other agents are going to engage with us in our listings, the way that they're posted on multiple listing service. I'm guessing you're going to start to see a lot more of even more discount. Like before, there were discount real estate companies. I keep hearing this over and over that you're going to start seeing like 1% listing companies pop up, like all kinds of things that happen. Like
and have that work out for them. And we had a major company that tried that, and they're losing every month. And if you've ever worked with those agents, it's painful.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure what company you're referring to, but I don't know,
Redfin.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I mean, I literally had an agent call me from the driveway, and I mean, I'm inside the house, and it was a model home, and she looks at me, and I realized, because I was waiting for her to walk up, phone rings, and she says, "Hey, it's me," and she waves. She says, "You got this, right?" And left her clients in the driveway.
Yeah, that's
right?
sad.
So the 1% thing, everybody's going to, there's going to be people that are going to try and get a discount, but they do it now. They have been.
So let's talk about that, because I'm glad you brought that up. So the only reason that model works is why you guys know. Well, the reason it works is because they typically get the buy side.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's kind of the model that they've been running. So what happens when there is no buy side? Same thing with Zillow, right? There's another one, Zillow.
Zillow's another one. I don't know what they're going to do. Right? Because then it's like, what leverage point do you have? And the other thing too is that like everybody's always going to want a discount, but it's like a discount until what end, right? Like you get what you for when it comes to service. So it's like you can't expect to pay like a 1% listing. You know what I mean? Like a 1% listing fee and get the same quality service that you would, let's say, out of like 2.5 or 3%, right? Because we don't have a standard. And so we have those same brokerages that are here. And I was like, again, you kind of see how the quality suffers because the agents are uninformed. They really don't know anything about the property. They can't help me, right? I'd be better off just contacting the seller myself. And so really I was like, again, like you're going to have companies that do that. I don't necessarily see it being a super impactful, but I also feel like the sellers that want significant discounts, they're going to have a way to get it anyways. And it's not like they didn't have that ability now, right? And so I guess the biggest thing for me is that I guess the only reason why I don't see it being that big of a change is because of the way that it's always been structured here and that it's always been the option. Sellers haven't always, been quote unquote required to pay commission, but it's always been negotiable, right? It's never been like, legally, right? It's not like we can ever force somebody to work with us. Like you either make a decision on whether or not you want to work with us or not. So if you're not happy with the service, the level that you're providing, the money that you're paying, and you don't feel like any of that makes sense, then fire your agent and find somebody else. Because there's somebody else that if you want it to be done cheaper, they can do it for you cheaper.
So a couple questions for you guys. So what about the person? So is it to your point, Ashley? There are actually, I believe, I could be wrong. I'll have to check this, and if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But there were some MLSs that you would have to actually put something for the agent, so that what happens sometimes is the brokerage would put $1.
Seen that,
right? As a fee. So what happens now when they do say, "Hey, I'm not paying anything. I don't care," and that's it. And then,
but are you serving? See, and in Florida, I have this argument all the time because when I was in Maryland, I was very spoiled.
And I'm just being devil's advocate, by the way. Got it.
When I was in Maryland, I was very spoiled that all of the MLSs shared one, or all the associations shared one MLS. And no matter where in Maryland I was looking, I could use the one MLS, right? Here in Florida, we're broken up into multiple different MLSs. I have to join all these different boards to best service my clients. Now, that because I do it doesn't mean everybody does it. So we'll have agents on the West Coast take a listing on the East Coast, post it in the West Coast MLS, and then you barely get any exposure. But because the law says it's allowed, right, it happens. It's the same thing with this. Yeah, you're going to tell me I can't put the compensation in there, but if I don't allow that buyer's agent the ability to make a living, and I run that buyer's agent out of this business, those people are going to be either left unattended, dealing with the listing agent who ultimately has to represent the seller. Okay, and our buyers are going to lose out, and it's going, if we go down that road, it would cripple our real estate community. All right, and they don't want that, because that will destroy our economy here in the United States. So that's why I don't believe that they're going to let this thing just slide like this.
So I think the other thing, when I was reading a little bit more in depth, apparently, and obviously this is kind of until they finalize everything, it's more so we can't put it in the, at least from what I read, that we cannot put it in the whatever brokerage portion of the listing, but we'll still be able to advertise it in private and public remarks, right? So I was like, okay, well then cool, whatever. But I think the biggest thing that we kind of run into now, obviously, Christopher, I agree with that too, is the fact that, like, look, I mean, the people at the end of the day that are going to suffer the most from this are going to be buyers, right? Because the majority of the time, buyers, at least the average home buyer that's looking to buy, interest rates has always been a thing, right? That's going to be fluctuating. You can't really deal with that. It's just the timing of the market and the situation of the economy, right? But basic supply and demand. So, like, an example in Atlanta, home prices have increased, like home values have increased at least like 30-something% over the past 3 years, which is pretty insane. People have on average like $200,000 to $250,000 in equity at minimum, right? And so now when you look at the affordability, where this is going to hit people the most is anybody between like that 300 to like 425 range, where they already have a hard time of coming up with down payment, closing costs, appraisal, attorney fees. And then on top, you want them to now potentially cover their agent's fees as well. I think you're going to be in a situation where they're going to have to figure out, if sellers don't pay it, is there a way that we can structure it in maybe their not necessarily their loan, but something in their financing that doesn't require them to take it out of pocket immediately, because most people do not have that money anyways. And then if not, I think a lot of times also with sellers that it would behoove them, for example, and I always use this worst case scenario, if you have 3 properties on the same street, 2 of them are offering buyer broker compensation and one decided not to, every buyer's agent is generally going to, and not necessarily because of their own choice, probably because of their client's choice, right? Like if I'm a buyer and there's 3 properties on the same street, I like all 3, but 2 of them are pretty much the same as far as pricing, square footage, everything else, and they're both willing to cover my agent's commission versus the one that's not, I'm going to choose the other 2 all day, every day, right? And that's not necessarily a preference for me. So it's like, okay, as a seller, realistically, it would make sense for you to offer something, right? If you're not going to give a full 3, 2.5, whatever it is, it makes sense to offer something, because if not, you're going to be in a similar situation, especially if we see an increase in inventory. Right now, sellers have leverage because there's really not a whole lot of inventory. So they can kind of decide what they want to do. But again, you're still in the same situation, because even in less inventory, you have a lesser buyer pool. And so a lot of these buyers that can buy right now are definitely not going to want to take in an additional cost on top of their home buying, cost currently. That's at least my thoughts.
So I'm going to switch gears now. That's a great thought, and I agree with you guys. And I want to talk about listings, and obviously the listings are the name of the game. No matter what the market's doing, when you have listings, they come to you. It's just the nature of the game, right? One of the last listings I took personally was 32 Lakeside Ave in Shrewsbury. We had 40 offers, 40. So that means even in that case, 39 buyers were not able to get that property, right? In that was with buyers agents. So the reality is listings are still the name of the game.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%.
So what are you guys doing? And in by the way, both of you are members of our real estate university. So appreciate that. I actually been a member for a long time now. I don't know, maybe over a year anyway, if not longer. Chris, I think you've going on about 6 months or so. Actually, Mel, longer than that. So yeah, I want to ask you 2 questions. Number one is, what are you going to do? Like, you need to take a listing. It's Tuesday, Chris, not counting the 5 that you already have coming on, Chris. you need to go find another listing before the weekend. How are you going to do that? And then I'm going to ask Ashley the same question.
I'm calling my sphere of influence. I mean that's the bottom line. I'm going to make my phone calls that I already have. I have between now and tomorrow, and I have 6 hours of lead gen on my calendar already. And in that time, I'll be making contacts with people in my database that I've already identified. It's time for me to call again. So, and I'll be calling until I get another listing appointment.
So you're just going into your pipeline, is what you're saying?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's the strongest thing. I built it over a period of time, but I mean, I can go into my pipeline any day of the week, and I'm going to schedule an appointment.
How many contacts do you have in your sphere of influence, your pipeline?
Well, in my database, I have 16,000.
Oh, okay.
And then of course they're broken down up into different categories. So I divide my time. I do my lead gen in 3-hour clips. I do an hour on my A's, and then I do typically an hour on my B's and C's, and then the third hour is typically for recruiting.
You're pretty regimented. What makes you successful, man?
I live by my calendar.
I can tell, man. All right, Ashley, same question. You need to take a listing before the weekend. Where how are you going to do that?
It's Sphere, and then another thing that I've been having a lot of success with is calling the like 6 or 7 houses around my last listing, either my last listing or another listing in the same neighborhood. Because I kid you not, every single time I have a listing in a neighborhood, it doesn't really matter what the market is. Someone else on that street is putting a sign in the yard either the same time, like once I'm under contract, once I'm closed, or within like 10 days or less of that. And so for me, I've had a lot of success circle dialing either my own listings within the same street or somebody else's listings. Like if there was another sale in my neighborhood, I would circle dial the neighbors around, because most agents are not doing that. And 99% of the time, I'm going to find another seller that has thought about selling. And so I would say 2 things: sphere of influence, and then circle dialing immediate listings.
So interesting, because I had 2 other members of our community on last week. I had Norman and Jennifer on, and both of them said one was for sale by owners, the other one was expireds. And now you guys are circle, sphere of influence and use to circle prospecting. So that's kind of cool. 4 different strategies, right, to achieve the same thing, really.
Yeah.
Do you guys do expireds and FSBOs as well, Ashley?
Every day, all day. That's today. So for sale by owners, expireds, I usually have it by days. Like for sale by owners are Mondays, expires are like Tuesdays, Thursdays, or Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Thursdays is usually Sphere, and Fridays follow up. But if I go through my list of people, I'll switch it to the next group of people.
But you're hitting them all. You're hitting all the sellers. You're not just relying only on the sphere of influence. So what I'm thinking is, if you went through your whole sphere of influence and nobody was going to list a house with you or couldn't get an appointment, you just go to expireds, FSBOs.
Yep.
Cool.
But now, because I've been so lax on following up with my sphere, especially David, because of yesterday, I was like, oh yeah, I don't want to know how much money I've left in my sphere from people that I haven't talked to in forever. Just because in conversations, I had like 2 or 3 new leads for people that are ready to do something right away. So I was like, that's an immediate. And that's easy enough, right? Because they either know me, they referred to me, or like they're a friend of a friend. So it's easier to have those conversations.
Do you want to talk about what you're referring to when you said yesterday?
Oh, our 8-day challenge. If you haven't joined it, if you guys are on it, definitely join it. We're hitting it hard. We have training in the morning, and then we do live calls. Well, really in the minute. So
yeah, well, it's too late for them to join this listing challenge, but they could join a future one. But to that point, what would you say about the community? You've been with us. I mean, you might be going on 2 years, actually. If I think about it, it's been a while. I have to look when you started, but it's
been 2 years, if not a little bit longer. I love it. I think the greatest thing about it is that you're around like-minded people that are just as hungry and just as accountable. And a lot of times, obviously, I mean, our business produces as much as two things: as much as we're willing to work into it, and then two, as many times that we're able to bring solutions. So if you have those two things, plus obviously with like David's community, that teaches you how, not just like how to, it's how to have conversations, but how to speak to people, and how to speak to people in a little bit of a different way, other than like the way that everybody else is approaching them, right? And so I think when you approach it that way, you learn the nuances of how to actually have conversations with people and how to ask the right questions. The conversations are a lot easier, and it makes the process a lot more fun. But I love it. I think the community is huge, and anybody that I can bring into it, I definitely make sure I recommend it, as long as they're willing to do the work. Because if they're not willing to do the work, it's useless. But
Yeah.
having a that's willing to do the work and you see their results is super inspiring.
Yeah, the accountability is definitely a big part of it, and not so much the accountability from me, like, hey, you need to do this, but the accountability being part of the community, you know. So, yeah, awesome. Christopher, what about you, man? You've been part of our community for quite a while now. Why is that important to you?
It's definitely about having your tribe, being around, like Ashley said, like-minded people. David, I started my real estate career in Maryland, and I grew through there, and I was doing really well, and then decided to expand down here to Florida. And I thought I had a pretty strong sphere when I got here. It turned out that everybody I knew was in their golden years, so nobody was selling their houses, and Florida is a different animal. So for a while, I struggled with really having like-minded people. It's just it's still a lot of people have that vacation mindset, and I'm not there. So it took me a while. So groups like this, they help me really to connect with other people that want to grow and leverage their businesses into the future.
Well, the other thing too with you, and then I'm going to have kind of like final thoughts from you guys too, because we start our call in 14 minutes, our afternoon call. But you have a team, and I wish when I was running my team, I had myself plus 2 admin plus 4 agents. I wish there was a place I could send them to get trained on the right stuff, right? Like I didn't have to do it myself. And so I think that it gives agents like you that are doing 100 units, with team members, a place that they can go get the training that maybe is not in your wheelhouse, right? That will help them learn some different skills.
Yeah, and this way they don't have to just listen to me talk all the time.
Yeah, it's good. So give us tell us first off, Chris. We'll start with you, Christopher, first. We'll wrap with you, Ashley. How does somebody get in touch with you, Chris, for referrals, and then give us your kind of final takeaways from what do you want people to take from listening to this today?
Easiest way to get a hold of me is either you can always email me at cnolan@thenolangroup.com, or you can always call me directly at 772-539-2473. Based out of Vero Beach, but our team covers most of Florida now. And bottom line is like I said, our industry will end up stronger after this. And I think that if we come back here this time next year, we'll all laugh about, it's not Y2K, right? We'll be okay. And it'll work out.
I like that. It's not Y2K. It's will be okay. That's your new catch line for your team. I love it. All right. And Ashley, how do people get in touch with you and give us your final thoughts?
The easiest way is probably phone. So you can reach me via mobile 678-943-3507 or email at ashley@kroegerproperties.com. That's like Kroger, like the grocery store. So KROEGER, and then properties with an S. As far as my takeaways,
where are you located? Just let people know where you're located again for referrals.
I service all of the Metro Atlanta area. Within a 2-mile radius of Atlanta. As far as what I kind of think the takeaways are is, again, I think take everything with a grain of salt. You've got to have a positive attitude going into this, whatever these changes are. And if you're in the industry for a long time, like if you're just getting in, if you've been in, there's always ebbs and flows to everything, right? So you have to be able to rock with the ebbs and flows and also learn how to pivot. So it's another situation. It's another opportunity to pivot. Where can you find the opportunity and the change, and you'll be fine.
All right. Well, great stuff. Awesome. Thank you, Ashley, Christopher. Thank you. You know what? We'll have to plan a year from now to do a follow-up, and let's see where we're at.
I like it.
All right. Awesome. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Bye, Ashley.
Hey, and just for people listening, if you're interested in our community, just go to realestatelistings.club. That's it, realestatelistings.club. You can sign up. There's actually a coupon for your first month. You can get $100 off your first month if you want to try it out for a month. Just use the code 100 off. When you register, it'll take $100 off your first month. Real Estate Listings Club. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys, and look forward to seeing you back in the club.
Bye.
See you soon.